When you think of empires, you think of Rome, right? For nearly 1,000 years, that name wasn't just a power, it was the power. An empire so massive, so dominant, it really seemed like it would last forever. I mean, they literally called their capital the Eternal City. Just think about that reach. From the deserts of Syria all the way to the forests of Britain, everyone, and I mean everyone, answered to Rome. And the stuff they left behind? We're still walking on their roads, still using their legal ideas as the foundation for our own civilization. And yet, it vanished. And it didn't just stumble, it completely shattered, plunging an entire continent into what we call the Dark Ages. So that's the big question, isn't it? How does a giant like that, something that looks eternal, just disappear? That's what we're digging into today. And believe me, we're going to uncover 3 lessons from its collapse that are just as powerful now as they were 2,000 years ago.
All right, so first things first. To really get why Rome fell apart, you gotta understand what made it so incredibly successful in the first place. And here's a hint. It wasn't just about having the biggest, toughest army.
Now, don't get me wrong. The Roman legions were the most feared fighting force on the planet, for sure. But their real secret weapon? It was something way smarter: assimilation. See, Rome didn't just show up, break things, take your stuff and leave. Nope, they stayed, and they built.
It was like they had this incredible offer for the people they conquered. They'd say, hey, we'll give you roads, clean water, amazing public baths, we'll give you law and order. But the real prize? The ultimate upgrade? Roman citizenship. All of a sudden, you weren't some conquered tribe anymore. You were Roman. You had rights. You were part of the biggest, most prosperous club in the world. They were masters at turning enemies into citizens.
And this strategy worked. Man, did it work. It led to something called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For over 2 centuries, the world around the Mediterranean saw this incredible period of stability and wealth. Just think about that. 200 years of relative peace. It was unheard of. So, what on earth happened? Well, here's the thing about giants like Rome. They don't usually die from one big knockout punch. It's more like a slow sickness. In Rome's case, it was like 3 fatal diseases all hitting at once. So let's talk about the first one. It just got too big for its own good. Picture this. At its height, the Roman Empire's border was thousands and thousands of miles long. I mean, just trying to defend that much territory, it's an absolute nightmare. And that sheer size started a chain reaction of really big problems. Okay, so problem number 1, the cost. Paying for an army that big meant taxes had to go up and up and up until they were basically choking the life out of the economy. Problem number 2, they were actually running out of Roman citizens to be soldiers. So they made a fateful choice. They started hiring outsiders, mercenaries, from the exact same tribes they were supposed to be protecting the border from. And right there, that's the critical shift. These new soldiers, they couldn't care less about the abstract idea of Rome. Their loyalty wasn't to the emperor or the Senate, it was to whoever was signing their paycheck. So the border, which was supposed to be this solid wall, basically became a revolving door. And you can draw a straight line from that decision to the sack of Rome in 410 AD. And get this, the guy leading the invasion, a Visigoth named Alaric. His previous job? A commander in the Roman army. The very people hired to guard the house ended up burning it down. It's one thing to have enemies at the gate, but the real danger, the one that truly brings you down, is the enemy you don't see, the one inside. While Rome was desperately trying to patch up its borders, its entire core was rotting away. See, Rome had this one massive fatal flaw. It never figured out a peaceful way to transfer power. The answer to who's the next emperor was almost always whoever has the army willing to kill for him. This meant endless civil war. It got so bad that during one 50-year stretch, they burned through more than 20 emperors. And yeah, most of them did not die of old age.
So think about what that means. The best soldiers in the empire weren't on the borders fighting off invaders. They were turned around, marching on Rome to put their guy on the throne. And while they were all busy fighting each other, the frontiers were left wide open for the picking.
Meanwhile, the economy was in a total nosedive. To pay for all this nonstop warfare, the emperors came up with a brilliant idea. They just started making their money worse. They'd melt down the silver coins, mix in cheap metals, and make more coins. The main silver coin, the denarius, went from being almost pure silver to having basically no silver in it at all.
That's a recipe for hyperinflation. Suddenly, your money was worthless. Trade just stopped. The whole economic engine seized up.
It's like a country's politics and its economy are its operating system, right? Well, Rome's operating system got a fatal virus, and the whole machine just blue-screened. Okay, so that brings us to our third lesson. And this one might be the most important, the most chilling of them all. Because this wasn't just about armies and money. This was about the soul of Rome. The empire literally lost its way. The Romans had a word for it, Romanitas. It's kind of hard to translate, but it means Romanness, the shared values and identity that made you Roman. In the early days, it was all about civic duty, law, serving the greater good. The classic story is Cincinnatus, right? This farmer who's made dictator to save the city, and as soon as he wins the war, he just gives up all that power and goes back to his farm. That's Romanitas, a shared idea of what mattered. But you fast forward to the late empire, and that idea was gone, totally evaporated. The rich weren't serving the state. They were running away to their giant country-estates to dodge taxes. And the average person? They weren't engaged citizens anymore. They were just trying to get by, kept distracted and fed by the government's bread and circuses policy. That sense of we're all in this together, it had vanished. And here's the kicker. When the final invaders were banging on the gates of the city, the people inside didn't really have anything left to fight for. The empire they were supposed to defend, it didn't really exist in their hearts anymore. The body was still walking around, but the soul was already gone. So let's pull all this together. That date we always learn in school, 476 AD, the fall of Rome. It wasn't really the day Rome died. It was more like the day the doctor finally signed the death certificate. It was just the last faint breath from a body that had been slowly dying from the inside out for hundreds of years. So what were those 3 fatal diseases again? Let's recap. First, you have overexpansion, just getting too big to manage. Second, you have that internal rot, the political backstabbing and the economic implosion. And finally, and maybe most importantly, you have a lost identity, when people forget what held them together in the first place. You know, the story of Rome isn't just ancient history. It's a pattern we see again and again. It's a timeless warning that nothing lasts forever and that the biggest dangers to any great power often come from within. So I'll leave you with this question. Looking at our world right now, which of these 3 lessons from the fall of Rome do you think we need to pay the most attention to today?